Hello viewers, welcome back. This is Literary Goa, the program about books and authors from Goa. Today's author needs no introduction, so I won't even waste my breath. Radharao Gracias sitting in front of me and giving a broad grin. He's been a politician, he's been an advocate, he's been many things. He's been an activist going back to the days of the anti-sand extraction movement, if I remember rightly, in Salcete in the early 70s. But today he's here as an author. Radha, tell us about your book, A Shortcut to Tipperary. And I know you say that you wrote this book to freeze in time the Goa that was. So tell us where your story takes us, what are the themes you touch on, and what motivated you to write the book?
Essentially, I am quite articulate. So I have no problem with writing or speaking. And now, as I grow older, I realize it's time for me to keep a record of what I think and what I do, rather than just talk orally and disappear. And COVID gave me an opportunity. You see, I was thinking for a long time. I had the book in my mind. And with COVID being confined to the house, I took advantage to write this book and to complete it. Now, the purpose of the book essentially was, see, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And I found that life in Goa is changing totally in the last, say, 30 years or so. Earlier, in my first part of my life, it was very easy. Things didn't move at a fast pace as they are now. So I thought maybe for the benefit of Goans, future generations, I will have to keep a record of the sort of life I led as in my teenage years. So I have taken care to narrate this story. See, it has two parts. The storyline is fictitious. Anyone can see it reading it. And the descriptive part is factually, I try to be as accurate as possible to life I led in my younger days. So the story is placed in my own village of Majorda, neighboring village of Betalbati. And the story is about us, about the Goans, particularly about the Goan Catholics' life, the sort of life we led. So the novel starts in Bombay. Then it goes, obviously, a Goan in Bombay would necessarily you have to bring a kud in it, the Goan clubs. So it goes to a kud. Then we travel back to Goa. And then again, a life for Goans, as I have seen it grow up, is in Goa, is in Bombay and abroad. So likewise, the story starts in Bombay, comes to Goa, and then finally ends abroad in Ireland. So that more or less encompasses for me the sort of life I have seen in my own Goa. You see, growing up, suddenly in the late 60s and 70s, I found that many houses which had remained closed were suddenly filling up with people. And people of my age, young men coming. And then
returning Goans?
Returning Goans from East Africa. Otherwise, we were not even aware of them. I knew there was a house, but there wasn't anyone there. So that was my first experience of Goan diaspora. And then it has continued. Goans work on the ships. They worked in East Africa. They worked in West Asia. And now they are scattered all over the world. So this story is about my community. And the purpose is actually for Goans now who are scattered all over, who have lost track of the land, who may not know how we lived. If they read my book, they will know precisely what life was. They may dislike the story, they may not appreciate the storyline. But as far as the descriptive part is concerned, I can assure everyone that that is pretty accurate. And that was the purpose.
Rather, it starts with in a very unusual way in that sense. You mentioned, you called it magic realism. So there is this guy who runs into this beggar.
Yeah. See, when you want to write something, you always try to fall back on some other genre of writing. Now, I have been reading a lot. I am essentially a big reader. Nowadays, not so much because my eyesight and all is not that good now. So I used to read a lot of Latin American literature. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, all these fellows I read. And Paulo Coelho, see my book, if you can go through, I have taken a leaf out of Paulo Coelho's book. His book is magic realism. And his narrator also starts the way I do. But what I do here is, I get his narrator appear in the dream of my narrator, if you have noticed. And then my narrator, based on that dream, does the same thing that the narrator in Paul Coelho's book did, The Alchemist. He goes on a journey. And my narrator still does not know who that man who appeared in his dream is. But at the very end of the book, he appears and identify himself and tells my men, see, this is the way life is. At some point of time, you will yourself appear in someone else's dream and send him chasing his lifestyle. So,
but I enjoyed the story about the coins, the covers turning into coins and all. I thought it was so catchy and so fascinating. And you know, after I heard your explanation, I could even identify with it and keep in touch with it. What I have one fight with you about is that why did you have to tell this story as fiction? Wouldn't it be better told as non-fiction? See, because you're a man of many stories. Okay, you have been through many experiences. You've been a politician, you've been a lawyer, you've been there. Why didn't you tell it as non-fiction?
See, what happens is when Noronha is there, you can't avoid fights, I suppose. So you're picking up a fight.
We started fighting the first time we met, no?
I know. We have always been fighting and we have always been friends also. See, what happens now, I know a lot of people ask me to write some sort of a memoir because they feel that I've been in the thick of things. I know things that happen. And many tell me that I have a particular way of putting things which is quite attractive. That's what the readers tell me. Yeah. So that being the case, I will certainly be in due course, hopefully I have good health in the next few years, writing a sort of a memoir where everything will come factually. Now the problem with facts is, if particularly me, if I write about politicians and all, there will be a lot of hassles. That's what I'm a bit worried. You see, when I state things about X, Y, and Z, they may not like it.
You're a man of strong views also.
I know, strong views, and I don't like to adjust to satisfy someone.
Right.
But my difficulty is that many people who are my contemporaries may feel insulted. That is the purpose that I do not want to write. Many of them are still friendsmen. But if I write what I know, what I have seen in politics, it may create unnecessary discord between me and them.
So some of your descriptions are really fascinating.
But again, Frederick, here what happens now? This is definitely not fact. If you have read through the whole thing, I couldn't put this as fact, man. See, all the things that, a few incidents are real, as I have said, which have been messed up to merge with the storyline. But otherwise, most of the book is fiction.
Yeah.
And my own experiences as a lawyer have come into it, definitely.
Your description of Goa has come into it in a very strong way. Your love for ornithology and birds comes into it. Okay, it shows up. And then your interest in tracking the Goan diaspora comes in. Okay, and so does your interest in politics. So to get to the juicy part of it, I read this story on the countermanding. I said I have to read this first before I read everything else. And in a way, like, you know, parts of chapters are almost standalone stories. Like, you know, it reminded me of
some of them.
It reminded me of this Just Matata series by Braz Menezes, where it's a novel, but you can read almost every chapter
independently. Yeah.
So in this countermanding, you give your own spin to it.
Yeah.
And you're forgetting...
That is why it is fiction.
Yeah, and you're forgetting, you're defending yourself, you're forgetting that I'm old enough to remember the actual case.
Yes.
And it's different from what you wrote in the book.
Exactly, that's why it's fiction. See what happens now.
That's a good difference.
Now, as far as the incident is concerned, it is well known. It had a huge impact, not just on Goa, on the whole country, because subsequent to that, law has been amended. This one particular incident of countermanding has resulted in a change in the law also.
In what sense?
See, earlier you could file an independent candidate, and upon his death, elections could be countermanded. It is no more so. Now only if a party candidate dies, elections are countermanded. The logic being, the candidate represents a party, and therefore you are depriving the party of a candidate.
Correct.
If an independent candidate contests, he dies, and his ideology dies with him. That is what the law now has been amended. So to that extent, that incident has had an impact on the legal process, on the electoral process.
What was the toughest thing in writing this book?
See, what happens now, I may not have been able to write the book if I were not writing a regular column for the Herald. For almost 10 years, I've been writing a column. Now, once you write, you get into the groove.
Yeah.
And once I got into the groove, even some of what I have written there have been integrated into this. Some of my old stories have been partly integrated. So it was not that difficult because I had already become a writer in the sense that I was writing a regular column. And I had one thing that encouraged me to write the book. So I know that my column is very well read, because people, once my column comes, I'll get so many calls for days together
I see.
on my column that you have said this.
Feedback.
Some may like it, some may, but mostly people, and they invariably tell me they like my style of writing. This is what everybody tells me. Now,
because you make your point strongly.
Whatever, yeah. Then what happens earlier also, wherever I would go for a wedding or something, whenever I was seen, people would all converge around me, friends, and discuss politics. Somehow I am, in public perception, I am some sort of a political pundit.
Because of your 5-year term as a MLA for the constituency.
2.5 years. No way. Not 5 years, 2.5. No by way. Election I was elected.
No way.
Luthuli.
Yeah. 2.5.
Yeah. No, it isn't because, I mean, somehow because I am actively involved, people think that I am some political. That's all right. But after I started writing these columns, things have changed. Because if go for it, they will always come and discuss my column, what I wrote, man. You wrote like this, how is this, how is everybody? A good number of people would come and discuss my column. So for me, it meant that people keep track of what I write.
True.
So if that is so, why don't I write more?
True.
You understand, no? True. So, and I have also seen, particularly in North Goa, unknown people would stop me and discuss my column with me.
I see.
Yes, many times. You are Radharao, you wrote that was very nice. I mean, this is standard for me to hear. South Goa, of course, there are no unknown people. Everybody is known. I mean, we know each other very well over the years. In Bardez, in Ilyich, I often find people who pointedly stop me and ask me and discuss, and they invariably like what I write. So that's why I said I'll go into a book. So it wasn't that difficult as such.
Read us something from your book that gives us an insight into your writing.
Yes, I think I will read a small part of it, 2-3 paras. Because I am reading these paras because they by themselves constitute a message, sort of, what we are. See, as we begin our descent, the old man narrates...
What's the context? Where are we now? Who's talking?
This is the narrator talking. The narrator, Ishmael, talking. Yeah. As we begin our descent, the old man narrates an incident. Franz Xavier, my neighbor, had purchased a cow at the annual cattle fair held following the feast of Mãe dos Pobres and was happily tending to it. But within 2 weeks, the cow disappeared without a trace. The motherless little calf had to be hand-fed for months. Marcus, as usual, was the suspect. He was a friend of Ali, the butcher, and it was bruited that Marcus would steal and sell the cattle to Ali. The narration is interrupted as Francis stumbles on a rock and falls flat on his face. He begins to bleed. We are rattled as a broken bone could be a damper to our otherwise joyful trip. Roberto, the elder son of Agustin, runs uphill and returns with a few leaves picked from a bush nearby, crushes them in his hands, and applies the extract over the wounds. Francis grimaces. To our good fortune, the wounds are not serious. The blood stops oozing, and we resume our descent, this time more cautiously as the old man continues his narration. Days after the disappearance, a leopard was found, possibly after a fight with a rival or a tiger, was found dead. We bring the carcass lower down to skin it. Along the way, we could hear the faint tinkling of a little bell, but could see no cow. I carefully skin the animal, as the pelt is valuable. The less damaged, the better. The teeth and the claws are also pulled out. They fetch a good price. As I turn over the carcass, the sources of the tinkling is revealed. Before the remains are buried, I cut open the stomach and recover the bell. Franz Xavier, who too is present, immediately identifies that it is the bell he had hung around the neck of his missing cow. Marcus is acquitted from the suspicion of cow theft. Now, just a correction. See what happens. This is a narration by both Ishmael and Agustin, not just Ishmael.
Yeah.
Second part is Agustin. So this is what used to happen in good old days. There were always people who were accused of cattle theft. So I thought I will incorporate this.
Just before we started, you were talking about the change in Goa in the last few years and when this novel is set. So, which is the period this novel is set in, and when did the change become more rapid in your view?
Yeah, the novel is set in, say, in my teenage years and a few years beyond. So that would be from around 68 till around 75 or 80, 75, 76.
It was still slow moving.
Yeah. That time life was still not. You see, in that time, if you or my grandfather or great grandfather were to come back, they would be able to just walk in and identify the village as it was.
You know, I went to Nerul. Sorry for interrupting. I went to Nerul after a gap of 30 years, and nothing in the Tinto has changed. This is like in the 80s, 90s. Nothing.
I see. So it was easy for our generations or ancestors to come back and identify. But beginning with, say, the 90s, things have been very speedily changing in Goa. See, life as we knew, Goa, which was essentially rural, even the cities, Margaon, when I was studying in Chogli College, more of a village than a town, just a center, few buildings, and otherwise but in the last 30 years, things have totally changed, man. Concrete has replaced roof tiles everywhere. It's nothing but constructions are going on. So I actually wanted to preserve Goa of my childhood in my book. That's what I have tried to do. Not just the physical geography, even the way of life, how people used to cultivate fields, how they used to catch fish.
Watermelons.
Everything, whatever I could remember, I have incorporated in the novel, so that anyone who reads it will know what Goa was in our childhood. I'm pretty sure if any Goan of my and your age reads the book, he will identify with the description. Because it is essentially composite. What is true of Betalbati and Majorda is true of every other village in Salcete at least.
Yeah. Republic of Salcete is slightly different from even the Republic of Bardes.
No, there was never a Republic of Bardes.
I'm just joking.
I know. Man.
No, I mean that...
Bardes had sold out long ago. At the time of Goa's liberation, only Salcete.
Now you're provoking me into entering a fight, but I won't take your bait. No, but yeah, the opinion poll and all the figures.
That's what I'm saying.
Figures of constituencies voting and all. I was surprised.
Yes.
But of course, the trajectory has been totally different. No, migration and English education. So whatever it is.
I am not criticizing it.
I enjoyed your book. I enjoyed your book as much as I enjoyed Remo's. In part because it covers our lifetime. The problem I faced was that when I'm reading your book, I'm always thinking like this is Radha at the back of my mind. This is Radha the politician. What is he trying to say here? What record is he trying to leave for us? And then I read this countermanding story, so I was really freaked out a bit. And I said, I also need to. I jumped straight away to Bob Marley.
Yeah.
We won't even go there because that's another minefield by itself. So Bob Marley, according to you, has. Not only according to you, according to some people, has a few Konkani words in his song Lion's Iron and things like that, which are unexplained, and you have your own explanation for it.
Yes.
But if we challenge you on it, you'll say that's fiction, right?
Obviously, it is fiction. I mean, see, if you go through that song, I can clearly hear the words, Tujhe Bapai Chang Kyasta from Bob Marley. I can hear. Yeah. And many others who have heard it with me can hear.
Of course, even we can hear.
Yeah. So therefore, I thought, well, how would this come out? And I imagined.
The explanation.
So obviously, it is my imagination. And since it's a fiction, I know no one can challenge it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Having said that, see Salcete again, I don't want to make it a Salcete versus the rest of the state dispute, but Salcete has this tradition of novels in that sense. Or at least if I understand it right, I might be wrong. Whether it's Francisco Luis Gomez or Brahmanes or Lambert Mascarenhas is Sorrowing Lies My Land. And now Radharao Gracias is, Shortcut to Tipperary. So what makes Salcete fertile ground for novels?
Oh no, I don't.
If it is so.
See what happened, there are others like say Bennett Paish is there, she has written.
Yeah.
Then there is Ben Antão.
Yeah.
Who are also
Lino Leitão.
He was in Canada now.
Yeah, he passed away, I think.
He passed away. Ben Antão is also older now.
Lino Leitão sets his work in Cabelosi. I wish I had interviewed him.
Varca.
Cabelosi, no? What's the church there? Anyway, Infant Jesus.
Leitãos are from from Varca.
Yeah, but his
storyline may be set. Yeah. He was in Canada, no?
Yeah.
So he's Ben Antão in Canada. Angelo Conto.
There are others.
Bennett Paish is in Goa.
Bras Menezes is an exception from the north.
From the north or something. I really would not know why people from... this one has written also, Savia Viegas.
Yeah.
She has also written a book of fiction.
But I'm talking more of kind of this political fiction, which is where politics enmeshes with the storyline, no, in that sense.
No, Lambert Mascarenhas, obviously, he was an activist, freedom fighter and all that.
Yeah.
And his book is essentially on those lines.
Right.
Yes. Whereas my book hardly has any politics for all that.
That's what you're saying. I don't think so.
No, indirectly you may. I have avoided politics here.
Okay. I'm just joking.
I know. What happens? People associate me with politics.
Yeah.
So I have tried to filter politics out of my book as far as possible, because I wouldn't want people to think it's a political book. It is not. The purpose of my book is not politics. Purpose of my book is to keep a record of the Goa I loved and I grew up in.
You're a wide reader. You have also been a journalist. I was surprised to learn.
A small timer, yes, in my college days.
So tell us about your reading and your writing with West Coast Times.
See, I used to write for West Coast Times earlier. Those were my student days. You see, one reason was, that I love football like every Goan. And those days I couldn't afford to buy tickets for the league matches and all.
Yeah.
So once I started reporting, I got a journalist pass. So I could go and watch every match and report also. I mean, that was more or less the purpose, to be able to have free entry into football games. And in the bargain, I would also write on little things here and there. But it was very on a limited scale. It wasn't exactly journalism. And that time, my friend was there in West Coast Times, Valmiki Falero.
My mentor also.
Yeah, we have been friends all these years. So that is how it started. Because by then I started practicing. Then that obviously journalism stopped.
So your generation, our generation of Goans read much more, or at least some of them.
I would guess so, because today what I find, people easily get information on the net. They Google and get information. But whereas reading a book gives you pleasure, which you don't get on the net. You will just get snippets there. When you read a book, you appreciate the language, the writer's thoughts, feelings, all that come. But I find that relative to my generation of today's young people of my age at that time do not read at all. Very rarely do they read. No one is interested in reading.
Rather, your book touches on many different themes. One is emigration, as we said. The other is the changing Goan world. The third could be love for ornithology, a bit of politics. What are the other themes you've touched on, and what are the themes you would like to see touched on in Goan writing?
See, as I have said, the book is essentially a reflection of the life I have led. So if there is ornithology coming in, you see, I have always been a lover of nature. Even now, when I am free, I love to walk alone, just go in the fields here and there, and watch birds. It has been part of my life. So it is reflected in my book. I did not have to make a study of birds to write what I have written. For me, it came naturally. So I suppose that happens with every author. When you write, your own experiences are reflected in
reality.
Yeah. So that's it. That's
what books would you like to see written on Goa? Where is the gap? Political biography?
No, I would be happy if people maintain a record of achievements of Goans in my lifetime, these last 30, 40. I find hardly anyone, because the government officially seems to be opposed to giving credit to Goans. And I mean credit to Goans, I mean to Catholic Goans. And I will explain why. You see, I feel that either
in Goa, outside Goa, you're talking about?
I am talking of Goa.
In Goa.
Goans anywhere in the world. Anywhere. See, now you have named the Mopa International Airport as Manohar Airport. We do not know it is whether Manohar Ajgaonkar or Manohar Parikar or Manohar Joshi also.
Or Manohar Lohia also.
Manohar Lohia also, but Manohar. Now, a politician. Now, if there is one Goan who deserves something to be named after him on a big scale, is General Sunit Francis Rodrigues. He is the one Goan who has been chief of the Indian Army Staff. I've been saying that all over. No one even cares. I'm pretty sure if he was not a Catholic, something would have been named after him. It is, I think, obviously, I am saying it straight away. That is the way it is.
Possibly you're right, but I think we suffer from a lack of history in any
Exactly. So you recognize the man and give him due, man. Name the Zuari Bridge after him. Incidentally, his ancestors come from that village of Kortal in
I see.
Kelosi. They were Gaitondes, from what I remember.
Settled in.
No, Gaitondes, they became Catholics.
Settled in
And then went to Kurtori. That is a
Kurtori.
different story. But you name something after him. He's the only Goan. We need more Goans to join the armed forces. If you have a General Sunit Roderick's bridge, someone will say, Baba, there's a great Goan there. Let me also join the army.
So, Boita, I think you're just making your point to prove that Radha is Radha. Without controversy, he cannot say something.
I am not creating controversy. I am speaking the truth.
I'm just joking. That's fine. That's fine. You have a right to your views,
Yes,
and we
yes.
perfectly accept it. I want to thank you for this book, and looking forward to many more, particularly that non-fiction autobiography of yours.
Yeah, sort of a memoir. I hope to do it. Yes, but before that, I will be publishing a book of short stories, which are still in the infancy. And before that, maybe I may publish essays, many of which have already been published.
I see.
Yeah, come in the Herald and all. So a lot of people want them. They say you put them in one.
That is true.
Yes.
Books somehow are easier to,
Yes. Everything in one this.
Yeah.
So that may be done before the end of the year.
Great going.
Yes.
All the best. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Frederick.